Situated on the southwest tip of Ireland, where the Atlantic meets the unforgiving mountains and coastline, lies a landscape sculpted by wind and rain. A region known for its rugged beauty and abundant marine life. Fin whales, humpback whales, minke whales, dolphins and porpoises visit West Cork's coastal waters at different times throughout the year. Atlantic grey and harbour seals breed on the small islands dotted along the coast, while many bird species make the waters around the islands of West Cork a summer home prior to their autumn migration south over the equator. During the course of this series, I'll not only be looking at the marine life that lives here, I'll also be asking, why is this region such a magnet for some of the world's most incredible marine species, and how we can all do our part in conserving the environment here in what is a truly wild West Cork. Sharks first appeared in the fossil record just over 400 million years ago. One of three filter-feeding members of the shark family that include the whale shark and the megamouth shark, the basking shark is the second largest fish on Earth. Basking sharks reach lengths of between 6 and 8 meters when adult, although larger individuals have been recorded at 12 meters. These amazing and beautiful fish appear as early as April around some parts of the Irish south and west coasts. We have encountered them off West Cork as late as September. Regrettably, bycatch, direct harvesting for their fins, and ship strike remain the greatest threat for this species. They are, of course, protected around the Irish coast, and there are many places that are becoming a mecca for those wishing to look at and study these huge fish. I wanted to learn more about these remarkable animals, and I went out with Vincent Hyland, who has been studying these animals and filming them off the Irish coast for over 20 years.
Not so many this afternoon. Would somebody say, no fin whales yet, or no, is that normal?
No, it is, but yeah. Amazing.
So my first encounter with a basking shark was when I was 12. I was down in Kerry in Derrynane actually, and I used to put on a mask and a snorkel and some fins, and I used to jump in the water with a bag of stones so that I could try and get down on a single breath as deep as I could. And when I came up, there was a basking shark beside me. I didn't actually know what it was. I got scared, really scared, and I swam like mad to get into the shore and sat on the rock, and I just saw this thing going back and forth and back and forth. Didn't know what it was, and then I mentioned it to a couple of fellas in the village, and they told me that it was a sunfish. And that it fed on plankton, the smallest little piece. So I mean, 12-year-old, this was an amazing encounter. And many years later, then I never got really the opportunity to see one, because we were always in Dublin. And eventually, then I was lucky enough to get my first rigid inflatable boat, and I invested in some film gear. And I went from there then, and for the last 25 years, nearly every year or 2 years at least, anyway, I've got in the water with basking sharks. I'm just absolutely fascinated by them. There's 3 different light intensities on it. So the south and west and northwest coasts of Ireland are fantastic for basking sharks to accumulate during the summer, and that's probably because the waters are clear. You also get these incredibly large plankton blooms, so it's a fantastic place to feed. They're not going to go hungry here. There's no disturbance really. I think that's key as well. So they go in and out of plankton blooms. They move one way and then they turn around and come back into the plankton bloom. And there's also things like, maybe this is from a behavioural perspective, and particularly in terms of reproduction, this nose to tail behaviour perhaps maybe is something to do with courtship. So they could come into these waters because of that too, and nobody really knows. But also then in terms of protecting the young basking sharks, do the young basking sharks, for instance, learn off the mother or the parents? Do they congregate in groups sometimes like that in terms of social? And maybe is it a case that the young learns how to feed and go through these particular plankton blooms. So there's all of those things going on in relation to basking shark behaviour and the reason why they come to this particular part of Ireland, the south, the west and the northwest.
One has just gone down behind you there, Vinny. I think he's going to come back up as he comes into the turn there.
Okay. So another thing about basking sharks is, why do they feed on the surface? Well, it's probably because when you get plankton blooms, for instance, everything, particularly zooplankton, is swimming up towards the surface, and the plant plankton that they eat also tends to accumulate in sunlight. So it's going to maximize the available light. And in doing so then it attracts all of that microscopic plankton up to the surface. There's also these vertical water column, there's currents that actually upwell and they bring the plankton up to the surface. So for instance then the basking shark primarily concentrates its efforts on the surface, and that's why when you're looking for basking sharks, the big telltale sign from a distance is the triangular fin. Sometimes you'll actually see two in the water, but it's generally you've got the large triangular dorsal fin, but then you've got the tail fin as well, just sticking itself out, and usually that's very floppy, So they feed on the surface because that's where the food comes up to. It upwells and it's maximising on the sunlight. So productive, really. It's a productive sunlit environment. Sometimes actually when they see you, they'll close their mouths, and they'll stop feeding, and then they turn into what I call a proper shark. Because when you see a basking shark for the first time, or perhaps most times, they don't really look like shark. They're just like this. They look like this giant mouth in the water that has a tapering body. And I suppose, in the context of studying them, it's really just, for me, it's been in terms of their behaviour. I remember, for instance, filming a group of about maybe 7 off Valencia one year, and seeing for the first time that there was lampreys stuck to their undersides, and there was another connection. You had the sea lamprey that would come into shore to spawn up the rivers, and then it would go back out, and then it would attach itself onto a basking shark. So I was fascinated about the whole kind of interrelationships with basking sharks.
One characteristic of the basking shark that endears them to the human psyche is that the eggs are fertilised internally, and some species give birth to live young, the pups being born as fully formed replicas of their parents. I spoke to Dr. Morvis Gore in the Cayman Islands by Skype about the different reproductive systems of sharks and rays, especially that of the basking shark.
Well, there's 3 different types. There's ovipary, where you have embryos that develop in the egg in the female, and they've got a yolk sac in, and cat sharks and horn sharks will have this type of reproduction. Then you have ovovipary, that's eggs. So the embryos develop again inside a pouch, but this is a much thinner pouch, and it's inside the female. And again, they've got yolk sacs, and then they're born as pups. And basking sharks are like that, in fact. Then the 3rd type is vivipary. That's where you have pups that develop on an umbilical cord, a little bit like mammals. So they get oxygen and they get nutrients from the mothers this way. And sharks like bonnethead sharks or blacktip sharks and zebra sharks use this kind of method.
Okay, well that's fantastic. Have a fantastic time out there, and thank you again so much for talking to us. The basking shark has been trawling the world's ocean in its current form for nearly 25 million years. It is listed on the IUCN Red List as vulnerable and may become endangered if we do not globally address the issues that are threatening its survival and reproduction. For our grandchildren not to be able to drift on a sunlit, calm ocean, watching these magnificent giants weaving back and forth in search of their tiny planktonic prey would be nothing short of a tragedy.
The best experience they can have with any wild animal is to get into their environment and just take a look at the size of it, look at the colour, the mottled green colour, the greeny kind of cream, stunning, and the shape of the fins, and then the big tail, and as underwater, like when it just glides past you, you can just see that tail and it's going like that, real slow, but purposely, and it's doing that for a reason. I'm just blown away by that, you know. It's amazing, fantastic.
Next time on Wild West Cork, we visit Lough Hyne, Ireland's first marine nature reserve and a haven for swimmers, kayakers and outdoor enthusiasts. This remarkable marine lake sustains an amazing variety of plants and animals, many of which can't be found anywhere else in Ireland.